Hello, friends. I am Justin Otto, and you are listening to the Dharma Junkie podcast. I hope the new year finds all of you well. I am, for the most part, okay. I've got the sickness right now, so I'm not going to waste too much time on my usual nonsensical ramblings for this intro, and we're going to get right to it. On this episode, my guest is David J. McNeff. Dave is the author of The WorkLife Balance Myth, Rethinking Your Optimal Balance for Success. And we talk a lot about debunking the myth of the work-life balance. Apparently, it's a thing that doesn't exist, and it's no wonder that I've never been able to find it. Aside from being an author, David is also a thought leader, an executive advisor, jury trial consultant, profiling expert, workshop facilitator, and keynote speaker. Who would have thought? And he's here to help us to live richer, more enjoyable, and meaningful lives. So, without further ado, David McNeff.
You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state. Just relax and enjoy it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. Using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
Dave McNeff, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I am doing fine, Justin. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on your show.
Man, it is lovely to have you. I really appreciate you doing it. I'm doing very well. I like I said, I had my last final for the semester today, so I am celebrating that by recording a podcast and then doing absolutely nothing for the rest of the day. Because I finally don't have to do homework, so I'm going to revel in that for the time that I have it.
Oh, very good. Love that. Love it.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book, man. But first, I'd like to get a little bit of background about yourself.
Sure. So, in fact, this book spun out of what I do for a living. So what I do for a living has multiple levels. So sort of level one, I work with a lot of executives and executive teams here in the US, in Europe, and in India, working on things like leadership, communication, corporate presence, and managing people. And it's a lot of people who are under a lot of pressure. Second tier is I do conflict resolution work, which is primarily coming out of the private equity sector. So when they stick two teams together from two competing companies, if you will, there's a lot of tension. So they have to go in there and smooth those waters. Third thing I do, which is unrelated, I do jury and trial consulting because I do profiling and this is in the patent litigation in the pharmaceutical sector. So my clients are the brand companies. They get sued by patent infringement from the generics. And then at litigation, I help advise the client on whether they should settle or not. Pre-trial, we select the jury, we profile the judge. So it's a lot of people and pressure. And then finally, I do a lot of public speaking, annual company meeting speeches on a number of topics, of which this is one of them, the work-life balance myth.
Right.
So I've been doing this work for years, and the work-life balance myth book spun out of the individual stress management work I did with individual clients and teams. So that's where the book came from and why it surfaced.
You have this method, the 7 slices of life. And I'm not exactly familiar with what that is. So could we talk about that for a second? Because I think that would really give us a scope of how you do what you do.
Yeah, put this in context. The work-life balance myth, the key word being myth, was the notion that people had, when I first started talking about it, that I only have 2 lives. I have my family and home and work. And I'm trying to find a balance. And I would say, well, that's a myth. There's no mathematical balance because of the time commitment your work takes. So you're never going to have a balance. However, if you realize you have 5 other lives, or what I call slices, that make up your whole life. So you've got your family, and professional slice. Then you've got your personal slice. Then you have your emotional slice, your physical slice, your intellectual slice, and then finally your spiritual slice. In each one of these 5 areas or slices of your life, it's totally about you. So your personal slice is about what you do for you. It might be a hobby, it might include other people, but it might just include you. Your physical life is what you do with your body. And what I've always said to people is between the ages of 0 and 30, your body tends to take care of itself, but around age 31, you actually have to start paying attention to how you feed it, how you exercise it,
I know that's right.
right? Because all of a sudden things start moving around and it's a problem. And then in your emotional life, for a lot of people, Justin, I have to talk to them about and say, you realize you have them, you have emotions, because a lot of people have shoved that away. And then the intellectual slice is your native curiosity.
Right.
How curious are you as a person to learn, or have you stopped that? And then finally, the spiritual slice is, well, why are you here and how do we all matter? And what is the bigger picture in this universe we live in that seems to be expanding every day? So finding out how you live in all 7 slices was the beginning of this method. And so when I first started it, we would have this circle and we would put the percentage time per week you thought or think you put in each slice. And what I found in my own business practice, after the age of 40 something, the average person had 3 of those slices with a 0 percentage next to it.
Yeah.
And then what they found was the more stressed out, burned out people were, the fewer slices that were available. In other words, I'm not living at all in 4 of those slices. And then the stress level went up. And so what happened when people started exercising this method is their claim was, oh my gosh, I have work-life balance. And I said, no, you still don't have that. But you have harmony.
Right.
You now have a way to disperse the stress that gets manufactured in those 2 main slices of your life.
Right. Okay. It's funny. It's funny. I said I wasn't familiar with it, but I actually live my life by a very, very similar set of precepts. I have like 5 things that I try to hit every day. And if I hit those 5 things every day, it makes for a satisfying day for me. It makes for a fulfilling day. And those are exercise, physical nutrition, exercise, nutrition, meaningful life experiences, satisfying personal relationships with others, the community aspect, and then spirituality. So I think we're talking about the same thing here.
You're, inadvertently, you're doing exactly what this method is designed to do. So people have asked me, all right, because I'm sure understand this. A lot of people use this right away. It worked, and then they stopped it.
Right.
And that was very common. I found it very common. And people have asked me who dropped it, well, how do I maintain this? Once the crises or the trauma is over and I'm out of it, how do you maintain it? And I said, it's a schedule.
Right. Yeah. It's a routine.
It's the problem. It's the same as dieting. If you need to lose 30 pounds and you lose 30 pounds by whatever diet, and you go, great, now I'll go back.
Yeah, you don't go back to eating the way you were eating. Yeah, it's not going to work out for you.
Right. As opposed to why don't you just make it your lifestyle to eat correctly so you keep 30 pounds off? It's the same thing with this method. Once you start it and it works, why would you drop it?
Right. Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And then, today...
Or if it's fixed, don't break it.
What? Leave it alone.
Yeah,
don't change the thing.
Don't screw with a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. I've noticed that, I've noticed that anytime I lack in one of those areas, it's immediately noticeable for me. Like I see it reflecting in my personal life almost immediately. And it doesn't take long. It can just take a week of not going to the gym, and then you just fall out of that rhythm, and then you're back in the mess again.
What triggers you to go back? I mean, is there something you think or feel, and that's what brings it back? Or is it just a mental reminder that, oh, I haven't been to the gym in a week?
Most of the time it's, I definitely notice it physically, but I also notice it mentally. While I initially started going to the gym for the physical benefits, I almost immediately noticed the mental benefits as well. And now I go more for my mental health than my physical health, even though my physical health is already being taken care of just by the sheer process of going. But, it's just like we're talking about. I noticed that when it wasn't in my life and I wasn't making that a large priority, that I immediately noticed a negative impact on my life. So just I know if I don't go to the gym, I'm going to suffer. So better go to the gym, and that's just a commitment that I've made to myself, and that's really what it is. I've made these commitments to myself that I'm going to do these things every day to guarantee myself the best day that I could have.
Well, and do you find when you're active in these exercises and activities, your ability to manage your stress is easier?
Generally, I've got a pretty dedicated meditation practice and have for a while.
Okay.
Like I'm very attuned with staying with the present moment and the present time experience. And that's really what helps me balance or not balance, but reduce my stress, is because I don't worry about anything else going on other than what I've got going on right now.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's what I've noticed in myself and with others, is that when you spend a few minutes, not hours and days, but a few minutes in each slice of your life, the overall impact is this more calm approach to the stress, because the stresses will always keep coming.
Oh yeah. They don't stop.
Business or personal or family or health or whatever the stress is, it's never going to stop, and you and I can't control it. And I've had to remind, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, I have to remind a lot of clients who are really committed to their professional lives that the other slices have no money in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's by design, it seems to me. It's free. All you have to do is spend a few minutes there and you'll get a benefit. And I do think, in the case studies I write about in the book, that was the phenomena that they mentioned time and time again. But the one culprit in all of this is time.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
A lot of people feel, particularly in COVID, with the pressure of being at home and being able to execute more work, they actually felt they had less free time. So it's been a strange phenomena in COVID to have people at home more complaining about less time available.
Yeah, it seems odd to me.
Right? Well, you just saved 2 hours a day in commuting time. How could you possibly be out of time?
Right.
Oh, I'm working, I can't keep up, and so on and so forth. So I think people have struggled with discipline in how to, like what you were talking about, you have discipline and it works. I think a lot of people went home, 2 years ago or 20 months ago without that.
Right. Well, it's, to be honest, it's something I like. The amount of discipline that I do have now is something that I developed over the course of the last 2 years. Like I was not as disciplined, no, that's a lie. That's not exactly the truth, but it was right around the same time frame, maybe just before, I would say probably 2019, that I really started being ultra regimented and disciplined. And I've seen the effects that has on my life. We can live in chaos, but it's probably not going to be to our benefit most of the time. And there's a difference between spontaneity and just chaotic, and I think that's important to note.
there's an old cliche, discipline breeds freedom.
Yeah.
Or
I say that all
discipline.
the time, and people hate when I tell them that.
Oh, no. It's totally true, Justin.
I know it's true for sure.
The more
I
structure
get
you
it.
have, you can schedule free time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your schedule. Make it however you want.
You don't have to complain that you're stressed out because you have so many conflicts and chaos in your life. There is an approach. And I think that's kind of why this book caught on in business.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of what came out of when it was public, it was because it came out in February of this year in COVID. A lot of HR departments found out about it
Hmm.
and reached out to say, we've got to talk about burnout with our people at home. And so, like right out of the chute, that's what happened. And that's why this whole burnout phenomena is pretty interesting, because it's one reason why people don't want to go back to the office. They're thinking, well, I'm going to get burned out if I go into the office. And
Right.
I go, well, have you taken a look at yourself while you're at home?
Right. Yeah. It's just like when people get diagnosed with depression.
Yes.
And they attribute it to a chemical imbalance, when it's like, well, what's the rest of your life look like? Like what's going on in the other areas of your life? Like, how are things at home? How are things at work? How, what are you exercising? Are you eating right? Like, there's so many factors that play into mental health that people just overlook. And I think that is one of the biggest problems in society today, is everybody's just looking for that quick fix, and the real fixes aren't exactly quick, and they're not exactly easy.
Yeah, I think the 7 slice method, the only complaint I've had, well, two complaints. One, as I mentioned earlier, is the time. And then the other is, well, how do I combine them? Because I don't have enough time to do one at a time. So a lot of people have, well, my personal life is going to be walking 3 times a week with my spouse or partner.
Right.
Okay, well, then you're combining two.
Yeah, just knock 2 out with 1. Yep.
Yeah, two. And I think a lot of people found some success doing that. Like in the spiritual life, which you were just referencing with meditation, for example, a lot of people decided to read about their spirituality as part of their personal life, the curiosity and spiritual. So it's 3 slices combined into one activity. So I think that's another technique people have used with this method to kind of make it work for them.
Right. Yeah. And I do the same thing, whether it be, going to a concert or some sort of event with my significant other, or, just hanging out, and, we meditate together sometimes. And, so we combine all these different aspects of our life together, so that we can do multiple things at one time, because even though like I said, I do really like to be mindful of what I'm doing and really concentrate on one thing at a time. I used to try to do too much at once. And then, I started listening to the Tao, and now I try to do more by doing less.
But
you make it work. You figure out what works for you, and then you just apply it consistently.
No.
And then, the nice part about that is you don't even have to figure it out. There's people that have already figured all this stuff out for us. We just have to actually be open to suggestion, and then apply the suggestions that people give us.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely could not agree more. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So what's your thought on the evolving work style subject? Meaning, it's December, but say, let's push it out 6 months to June. Do you think hybrid will be permanent? Will it be changing every 3 months? Do you think we'll go all the way back? Or do you think it'll be a hodgepodge?
I think it's probably going to be a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
I think it just is going to vary company to company, and individual case to individual case, and geographic locality as well. Like I said, I'm in Florida, so we have a very different situation here than a lot of the rest of the country. There's places that still have a lot of lockdown procedures going on. There's restrictions as far as businesses are concerned. And in Florida, we don't have any of that right now. There's no mask mandates. There's no it's just
Right.
business as usual here. So it's really hard for me to say, because I am in a place that is, I don't want to say far removed from what's going on, but approaching it in a different manner.
Got it.
So here, for instance, I think that a lot of it is going to just go back to the way it was. I don't think there's going to be a lot of hybrid stuff here. Maybe the people that were working remotely already are going to continue working remotely, but I don't think that there's going to be any real change here. Other than a lot of people, like we were discussing earlier, have figured out that they don't necessarily want to go back to a job that they are miserable at.
Right.
That's the biggest change here.
I think everyone that I've been exposed to in COVID on some level has re-examined their life.
Right. I would hope so.
In other words, they've looked at, okay, what I'm doing. Do I want to do it? Does it work for me in my family or individual situation? Where does the economics of my professional life fit with the rest of my life? Have you noticed people are a little more attuned to talking about that as well in your world?
I have. I've noticed that a lot of people are definitely more open to having that discussion than they ever have been, which is nice. It's nice because I think these are topics that need to be talked about.
Well, I think it plays into this whole, work-life balance, great resignation thing.
Right. Yeah.
People leaving jobs at such a higher rate than pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And a large part of it is to find, in their minds, a work-life balance that's better and meeting their own hybrid needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning,
I would
do
agree with
I
that.
work?
I would agree with that. I think for me personally, I've found that because I've hit burnout a couple times in my life, and it has not been turned out well for me, so to speak. And for me, what it was just doing a job that I didn't find meaning in. It was not fulfilling in any way, shape, or form. I was just a warm body, for lack of a better term, and when you're that easy, I'm speaking in particular about the restaurant industry, and, especially in that line of work, everybody is so easily replaceable, and you're so unappreciated. It is just, I just found it completely unfulfilling, and it drove me completely insane, and now that's not to say that at the time I did not have harmony in these other aspects, because I was already hitting that burnout, and it was one of those jobs where I dreaded going to work, and that's never a good situation,
No, that's actually a bad situation.
Yeah. It's the opposite of a good situation.
Right. But that actually begs a question I've got for you on the restaurant and hospitality field. Do you suppose that's why 30% fewer people are going back to that industry?
Absolutely. I think that they are tired of doing something that they hate, and that has no, there's no fulfillment in that line of work.
Do you think there's a solution to that problem, meaning in the restaurant industry? Can they solve that problem or not?
I don't think it's a solvable problem. I think, people just apply for those jobs because they need a job. It's not, it's only the people that really pursue, excelling in that industry, people that go to culinary school that want to be chefs and things, that really have people that really have a passion for it, that find fulfillment in it. For everybody else, it's just a means to, it's a means to a way, because they've got bills to pay, and they know that they can get a job in a restaurant.
So
because they're always hiring, because the turnover rate's so high, because it's a miserable job.
The vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So do you think those people who used to work there, who have not gone back, do you think they're working somewhere else or not working?
I think it's probably a pretty varied mix. I think it's probably a pretty healthy mix of both. Good luck not working. I don't think that's it's going to be a pretty untenable situation eventually. But I think other people, you know, are definitely just went into other fields and they were like, you know, I may not be happy in this other thing, but I'll definitely be happier than I was doing the restaurant work. Or, you know, we could apply that to any other job for that matter. But I think that, you know, ultimately people have I think that the pandemic has given people the opportunity to really look at their lives and really have some deep introspection because they were able to slow down for the first time, maybe ever, and actually go, what have I been doing? What have I been doing with my life? I think I don't know any of the numbers on this, obviously, but I think we're going to see a lot of people going back to school like myself. You know, and I started school back, my intention was I actually started applying to get back into school before the pandemic. So it was not, the pandemic didn't spur that decision for me, but it definitely reinforced the fact that like, I don't want to continue doing what I'm doing. And I feel like I deserve better and I want better for myself. I want a better work life. I want to do something that is actually meaningful and fulfilling to me and something that actually makes a difference in the world, something that'll reduce the amount of suffering in the world. And all the chicken Parmesan in the world is probably not going to do that.
That's probably accurate. That's an accurate statement. Very good. Love it.
Yeah. So that's my opinion on that. What do you think?
I think reality is going to evolve. I gave a little talk last week to a group. It was a change management executive team session. And I said, you know, the whole hybrid work environment in COVID, that when you look out in the future by looking backwards a little bit, I think what's going to happen is time is moving so quickly. The velocity of change is so fast that all of us are going to have to evolve to a constant sort of change in each industry over the next several years. So I think the restaurant industry is going to reinvent how they work over the next year or two. I think I could give you a half a dozen other sectors that they're going to have to figure out. And on a corporate, you know, leadership standpoint, you know, people who want to stay at home are probably going to have to come to grips with advancement for them will be different than it will be for those who go into the office.
Right.
And it's not going to be better or worse. It's going to be different. So if you don't want to lead teams, for example, or you just want to be an individual contributor, it's probably going to be very rewarding for you to stay at home because you can get more work done. Right. Yeah. But if you want to lead and manage teams, you're probably going to, in order to advance, you're going to have to go into the office because that's where the people are. So I think sectors will come and go. I mean, there's going to be an ebb and flow of sectors that are doing well versus those that are not doing well. And I think the workforce is going to go with it. Right. I think people change and go where the jobs are and where the work style meets their home and family needs. That's what I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, well, it's about time we had some sort of, I mean, that's the only real consistent thing in life is change, right? That's the only thing we can count on is everything is slowly evolving and is impermanent. So this, you know, working the way that we have for as long as we have with this set of societal standards of, okay, you have to go to the office from this hour to this hour and it has to be done in this month. I think that's going to go away. I think people are getting a different understanding of like, you don't necessarily have to do that. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people that get stuck in jobs where it's like, okay, well, you have to be in the office from say 9 to 5. And it doesn't matter whether you get all the work done that you had to get done or not. You still have to be in the office from 9 to 5. It's like, well, why? Why do I have to do that? If I got all the work done that I needed to get done for the day, it's done. Why can't I have the rest of my time? And I think we're probably going to see a lot of shift towards more salaried employees because people are going to realize just that. They're like, well, look, you know, I don't want to work for an hourly wage when I get, you know, if I can get 8 hours worth of work done in 4 hours, why don't I deserve the same amount of pay for the effort. It should be,
Right.
amounted to the labor, not the time.
Right. You think that'll happen soon? I wonder.
I don't know. I hope, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope people start getting paid what they're worth. And that's one of the big things too, is I think that a lot of people aren't going back to work because they're tired of not getting paid what they're worth. And they're realizing how valuable their time is. And I think that this whole pandemic has really kind of pushed a lot of existential dread into people. And they're starting to realize, hey, wait a minute, memento mori, you die at the end and life is fleeting and we could go at any minute. Maybe I don't want to, piss my life away under fluorescent tubes for the rest of my life for $10 an hour. Just
Right. Right. No, it's so true. And the whole stress situation is, I don't think not working is stress less.
no.
Right. Because it just shifts. Okay. Well, economically, how am I gonna do this, or what am I gonna do, and so on and so forth. So I do think it's an evolution. I think we're moving towards something else than what we had 2 years ago.
Right.
But I think it's evolving very quickly. And I just think this emphasis on, or more emphasis on, from companies on mental health, burnout, and so forth is probably here to stay at some level.
I hope so. I hope it is. I hope that the mental health connection to work life is a more readily discussed topic, because it was so avoided for so long. Nobody talked about anything having to do with mental health at work. They were like, just go to work and do it. Just go do your job. It's like, well, but it makes me want to kill myself. So maybe we should address that. Maybe we should address that aspect. But, like you said, one thing that you mentioned that kind of stood out for me was, like, you don't think that not working is the answer either. And I would agree with that, because I think people need something, and I think that feeling of accomplishment that you get from, completing a task, whether it be, at work, or, getting a good grade in school, or, whatever it is, whatever a small accomplishment that you get. I think that we as humans, we need that. I think that is the ultimate motivator to keep doing things and do the next thing and achieve the next account. And it doesn't have to be physical, attainment. It doesn't have to be goods and services and anything like that. It can be the meaningful life experiences. It can be spirituality. It can be any of those things. But I think that we need something. There has to be something that gives life meaning, because I think if you're just laying around every day, aimless, and you're not scheduled and you don't have any real responsibilities, I think that is what makes life ultimately meaningless. It's a very nihilistic approach to life that I just can't get on board with. I may have at one point, in my younger years, for sure got on board with that. Like, I don't want to do anything, I think we all went through that when we were young. Maybe not all of us. I know I did. But, now it's like, as I'm getting older, it's like, well, these are the things that actually give my life meaning. The responsibility is what gives my life meaning. Like, that's the reason I go to sleep early. That's the reason I get up early. That's the reason I meditate. That's the reason I go to the gym, is so that I can be if this is going to sound corny as shit, but the best citizen that I can be, and be the most productive person that I can be, to ultimately affect society in a positive way.
I think, you nailed it. The professional part of your life is where you measure, for the most part, success. And if you spend no time in it, I can't imagine where or how you're measuring success. I mean, I'm not talking about having children, and you're a woman having children and staying home. I mean, that's really combining two slices right there. But
right.
For most people who choose to do nothing, I think that's very stressful, because it puts the pressure on, well, what am I doing? What am I particularly good at? And what's my value to myself, my family, my friends, and my community? Right. In other words, if you're not measuring your professional value somehow, isn't that a loss? And I would think you'd feel left out or behind. And so I think the professional slice is vital, because that's where you learn success as a child. When you learn to cut the lawn in your family situation, to part-time jobs, to finally getting in the workforce, your potential grows when you're challenged. And when you look at your other slices of your life, if you will, it's harder to do that in those other slices.
Yeah, for sure. And, and like I said, it took me a long time to come to that realization, like that having that is so valuable, having that, but it has to have meaning, like I said, it really does have to have, like, you have to feel fulfilled in what you're doing. Otherwise it's just an exercise in futility. I think you're kind of defeating the purposes.
I'm gonna toss this out to you, because this is actually in the book. Several people discuss this. It turns out a lot of people think about work differently. Meaning, for some people, it's strictly a means to an end. I work hard so I can travel, fish, do something with my children, my hunt, I sail, I play sports, I earn the money for my lifestyle. Right. There are other people at the other spectrum. I am working to save lives in the medical sector.
Right.
Or I want to invent an electric car. In other words, my work has significant value to society, my community, and myself. And Justin, it's everything in between.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a broad spectrum for sure.
It's a broad spectrum. So when you ask people, what do you like most about what you do for a living? It's a question that has about 50 different responses.
Oh, yeah.
Depending upon, and I think my personal observation from years of doing is, when that's not a match, that's when work becomes stressful.
I would get on board with that for sure. For sure. Yeah. If I had to give a brief mission statement for what, my intention with just my life's meaning, it's, to reduce the amount of suffering in the world. So that feels like a pretty lofty thing to try to tackle. So that gives me some meaning, and I try to do that in many different ways, whether it be, just, through this podcast by trying to send a positive message out to people with information that will help them out. Or, I'm in meditation facilitator training right now, and I'm in school for psychology. So basically every aspect of my life, all the different things that I find meaning in are for this ultimate purpose of this greater goal, So that's what keeps me sane these days, if we're being honest. That's what keeps me from hitting burnout, is like everything I'm doing is I find meaning in, and I find real value in. And utility in, like there's utility in it, and for society and as a whole.
I think you just answered the question. Your the professional direction you're going in has meaning to you and value to others. So therefore, your professional life will have economics, but tremendous purpose.
Right.
Which will make work energizing for you.
That's the hope.
Well, no,
that's the hope, right?
Well, that's the hope. Yeah, no, it's the value proposition for you. For each individual, it's, well, why am I working this? Oh, so I can buy a boat. Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty exciting. I can't wait to see your boat. And so, it's the people who don't know why they're working that I find get stressed out first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know why I'm doing this. I don't know. I'm just showing up. And they're the ones who burn out first.
Yep. That was me in the last restaurant job I had. I was like, I don't even know why I'm here.
Yeah. As soon as you get there, Justin, you're basically cooked. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But
I had the thought several times while I was working. It was like, oh, man, I've quit better jobs than this. What am I doing here?
That's a great line. I've quit better jobs than this. Yeah,
I stole that line from Ghostbusters.
oh, good for you. That's great. Some of those old movies have the best lines of all time.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if Bill Murray was involved, probably.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, like I said, I think you have to have some sort of ultimate meaning in what you're doing, like for you, and then it has to benefit others in some way too. Like because it can't be purely self-serving, because that's also I think that's also a quick path to burnout and to being in a depressive state.
I think so, and I think in the first year of COVID, I think a lot of people who were in that miserable situation you were just referencing, they made a decision. I'm not going back to that particular job. Now I have to figure out what I'm going to do. And so I do think we're seeing the fallout from that. Where are people going back to work? And this labor shortage that is all over the United States is not going away anytime soon. And some experts are saying anticipate this shortage for another 6 months. So when you look at that, that's what I was asking earlier about the restaurant business. I don't know how some sectors are going to do without the workers.
I think what's going to end up happening is they're just going to put more workload on the few workers that they do have, so that the workers that they do have are just going to be tasked with like double the workload.
And you think they'll be compensated accordingly?
Not at all.
Not at all.
I wouldn't imagine. I mean, just knowing that industry, and I wouldn't think so. Unfortunately, because they should be. I think they should be. Not only should they be compensated, but they should be well compensated, because it's a hard job, and like I said, it's a thankless one. It's even more stressful when you are a kitchen employee, and you're busting your ass all night and making a third of what the servers are making for 5 times the work. It can be a very disheartening situation to live that every night.
Right. And hence the turnover there is nonstop.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but like I said, because it's a thankless job that's ultimately unfulfilling. Unless that's like your passion in life. Like I said, unless you absolutely just love working with food, and you grew up watching the Food Network, and you're like, oh, that's all I want to do for a living. And then sure, then there's meaning in it. But most people that work in that line of work are just there because they've got bills to pay.
Got it. No, I'm totally with you. Totally with you.
I think there's most people in any line of work. I think most people are of the view that they're just working. They do A to get B, and that's it. It's not like, well, I'm working towards trying to make positive change in the world, or I'm working for some, ultimately lofty goal. I think the majority of people just go to work to be able to pay their bills.
Well, a lot of people do.
And unfortunately, that's the society that we're born into. It's like we're kind of born into almost a form of slavery in that sense. It's like we don't, because they don't, free will is defined as the ability to, do otherwise, but you don't really have the option to do otherwise. Like you have no free will when it comes to like, well, you have to get a job and work to be able to live. That's what, the whole phrase, what do you do for, how do you make a living?
Yes.
Let's break that apart. Make a living? Like, I have to do this just in order to be able to live. Like we're born into indentured servitude from the jump. And like, I think a lot of people maybe are recognizing that too. Like, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of screwed up.
Do you think a lot of people think like that?
I think anybody that actually sat down and put any like real thought into it, really broke it apart philosophically and like looked at it. It's like Plato's allegory of the cave. Like we're in that. We have the society propped up around us that is just, it's all smoke and mirrors,
Interesting. But then you're advancing yourself by getting your degree and going into into your chosen field. So you're sort of making a decision to make your living at a different level.
Right. Well, I also recognize that it's kind of all just a big game. So I wanted to just
Right.
play the game to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, business is, first and foremost, it is a game, and each company, each sector has their own rules that they play by.
Right.
If you sign on, you play by their rules, or you change and go to another game. And so, business has always been a game, and you get rewarded through money to play.
Right.
There's no question about it.
Well, it's just, even society itself is built as the structure of a game. Our laws are just the instruction book for the game. And if you go against the instruction books, you get your freedom taken away. So by participating in the game according to the instruction book, you get to continue participating in the game. But if you deviate from the rules of the game, then we've got a problem.
Right.
I mean, we can break it all down. Like it's all just kind of a game, and you have to almost choose to what extent you're willing to participate in the game. And like I said, it's an interesting thought, like realizing that you really don't have the option of not getting, I guess you do. You could go you could live on the street and be homeless and beg, you could be you could go be a Buddhist monk, which, I've thought about doing. I'm already a practicing Buddhist, and sometimes I just want to disconnect from everything. But, outside of that, you really don't have the ability to do otherwise. So you really don't have free will, like in that aspect.
Well, but you have choices. In other words, here are some rules.
Not great ones.
I'm not saying that they're great ones.
You don't really have good choices.
Right.
But we do have choices. We do have choices.
Yeah, there are choices, and you hope to, and I think it's going on right now, you hope to find areas where your choices are well received. And I think that's what this whole pandemic has produced, is like, okay, I'm gonna try and make some different choices for myself. So I think that's actually alive and well right now.
Yeah, I would hope so. I hope that everybody has kind of, for lack of a better term, woken up over the pandemic and been like, oh, look, I need to make some better choices in my life. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to start eating better. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to go back to school and try to, further articulate myself and educate myself and, and just posit myself at a better position in society, in order, not for, like in my case, like not even for any real monetary gain. Like, eventually I would like to make the money that would enable me to work less hours, because for me, time is the most valuable thing. Like, I don't really care about stuff so much. Like, all this stuff is just stuff. I can always get more stuff, but I don't want stuff. Like, it's the meaningful life experiences and the personal relationships and the spirituality and all those things, those 5 things we talked about. Those are the things that I want in my life, not the shiny new car. Like, that means absolutely nothing to me. Would it be nice? Sure, it'd be great. Who doesn't like a new car? But is it absolutely necessary for my happiness? Not at all.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that. And maybe people are making those kinds of decisions who are not going back into the workforce. I don't know.
Right. You see, I was working full-time. At one point, I was working 2 full-time jobs and going to school full-time. And that's really what led to my ultimate burnout. And since then, I have, after said burnout, I'm only working part-time now. I'm in school full-time still, but I made a decision. I was like, look, I can have less money and have more time to focus on the things that I actually find meaning in, or I can continue to, ultimately kill myself working 80 hours a week at 2 full-time jobs and still trying to go to school full-time and not doing as well in school as I could be, as I'm capable of doing, just by sheerly not having the time available. Like I said, ultimately my time is the most valuable thing that I have, because I can't get any more of that. I could make all the money. I could, win the lottery tomorrow and have $182 billion or whatever it is, but that's not going to ultimately make me any happier. Like, my time is what makes me happy. like being able to have the autonomy and the freedom to do the things I want to do in my life makes me happy. Now, money can facilitate a lot of those things, but like a lot of those things are just unnecessary.
I think everyone, it's even with the 7 slices I write about in the book, you make your own choice about what you want to do in all 7 slices, which includes your professional life.
Mm-hmm.
What level of play do I want to participate in that area of my life?
Right.
And have it find, meaning in the other areas of your life. So I think how you made your decisions make an awful lot of sense for you. And I don't know how you did 2 full-time jobs. That's incredible.
Man, it was not easy. And ultimately, like I said, it led to a pretty big burnout and some pretty poor decisions on my part in some other areas of my life. But that's a story for another time.
Another time. How long did it take you to physically get your energy back from that experience?
About 3 months. Like after I like burned out and like I literally had to stop doing everything. Like I pretty much checked myself into a hospital and was like, I can't do this anymore. And about 3 months. And then in that time, it gave me the opportunity to really evaluate what I was doing and notice the mistakes that I was making that led me to get to that point, and then make some alterations in the course.
It's great. Good for you. That's a great life moment for you. You learned a lot.
Yeah, I'm still learning every day. I'm still figuring out little tweaks and hacks to ultimately just make this ride a little more enjoyable. And, but I think it does take being able to slow down and actually have the time to do that introspection and go, what's really valuable to me? Like what's meaningful to me? Like, what do I want out of my life? And what I don't want is to work 80 hours a week ever again. I mean, not to say that I don't, not to say that I don't put 80 hours a week into doing other things that that could be considered work. I make this podcast. I have several interviews a week. There's the editing process. There's a lot that goes into putting each episode together and putting them out. But I actually find meaning in this. I enjoy having meaningful conversations with people, because I learned something from everybody that I talk to. So this in itself is an exercise in work, but meaningful work, and I'm increasing my network of people. I'm increasing my knowledge just by having these conversations with people. I learn a little bit from everybody that I talk to. So it's ultimately beneficial for me, but it's ultimately also beneficial for other people because I'm sharing this information with the world. So yet again, there's that, balance.
I love it. No, it's, you're on the right track and you're clearly enjoying it. And if you enjoy it, it has meaning for you. It's going to work. It's going to provide you a real track to run on, I think.
Yeah, man. That's yet again, that's the hope. But it does, man. It does. I really enjoy it. I enjoy all the things that I do now, and because it's been, I've carefully curated my life into a life that I don't need a vacation from.
Love that. That's a great line. Speaking of great lines, that's a good one.
Because we talk about, people that save up so they can go on the trip or they can, go get the boat or do all these, like, I just want to be able to, I want my life to be so enjoyable that I don't need any of that stuff. Like my just everyday life, my everyday existence is so good for me that I don't need to worry about going to Paris or any, that stuff's nice. It's great. I would love to go see Paris. I would love to do all those things. I would love to travel. I would love to do all those things, but I don't I'm going to work myself to death so that I can go to Disney once a year. Like, nah, man, that sounds awful. It sounds like an awful way to live.
Oh, isn't that great? Yeah. Well, you're a perfect example. Everyone is looking at work a little differently.
Yeah.
They're looking at their lives a little differently and where stress is and how to avoid it.
Yep.
And everyone's looking at it a little differently. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you look at it in a pretty good way. And like I said, I think it's funny that we were talking about basically the same thing, and I didn't even have any realization that that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So where can people find your book at, man?
All right. So thank you for that. So it's on Amazon, and it's called The Work-Life Balance Myth. McGraw-Hill is the publisher. And you just go to Amazon, hit 2 buttons, and it arrives at your door 2 days later. Amazing.
Awesome. Love it. Do you have a website or anything?
Yeah, the website is www.peakcg.com. And on the website is descriptions of what I do and so forth. And if anybody has any questions or whatever, they can reach me through the website.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time to do this, man. It's very much appreciated.
Yes, thank you. This was great conversation. And I wish you the best with your degree and the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure we'll stay in touch. I've got your email.
Oh, absolutely. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to Dave McNeff for being on the show. If you would like to get in touch with him, I will have links on how to do so in the liner notes of the episode on dharmajunkiepodcast.com. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And as always, this has been Dharma Junkie. I'm Justin. Namaste.